Alright folks, today is December 21st, 2019. This is Doug Crank, American Artist, coming at you from the ridiculously cold state of Minnesota, which is located in northern central United States, right on the Canadian border, for those of you who are not in the United States. And today I'm going to talk about eBay. And the point of this discussion is to educate, inform, um, relay, I guess, and give my thoughts, and I guess just, let people know what my experience has taught me or what I see. So, first, let me say that eBay is, I think everybody knows what eBay is as far as an online auction company, and I think everybody's heard of it. But what I'm going to do is just do a quick, brief read of what Wikipedia has listed in the first paragraph, describing what eBay is for those of you who may not. If there is people, I guess, who don't know, I don't know how popular it is. You can never assume with stuff, I guess. And this is, as I said, listed on Wikipedia. It says eBay is an American multinational e-commerce corporation based in San Jose, California, that facilitates consumer-to-consumer and business-to-consumer sales through its website. And I'm not going to read everything, but some points, such as eBay was founded in 1995 and was one of the successes of the dot-com bubble. It's a multi-billion-dollar business in 30 countries. And they used to own half.com, which I really liked. Had membership on there too. You're basically a member of Half if you were on eBay. It's just that you had to visit or formally do it, register or whatever. But I liked half.com. It wasn't the same as eBay, but I thought it was fine. But half.com was closed, so that doesn't exist. So that's a short little intro for those of you who may not know or haven't used eBay. And before I get into my discussion, I want to just say my experience with eBay. I've been a member since 2005, and I have all positive feedback. Excuse me. And I used to sell on there, sell and buy. Now I just basically buy, but I get like almost 500 positive feedbacks at 100%. So I've been on there for about 15 years, so I've kind of run the gauntlet of experience of things as a buyer and as a seller, because I did have my own store, not very long, just kind of a trial thing. So I did get the experience of that, and plus, like I said, I've been a buyer on there too for a long time, and that's what I am now. So, and the stuff I'm going to talk about today is it's a lot of criticism or a lot of harsh things, you might think about eBay. But before I get into that, I just want to say that my experience with eBay has been more positive than negative, and it's a company I enjoy, and I've been on there, like I said, for a long time, and I continue to use it currently as most recent as of today. So it's not something I'm excuse me, I got a really bad sore throat, so my voice is going to sound different than normal. It's not something I'm trying to talk bad about or say don't use this service or something. But at the same time, there are a lot of things that I'm not sure everybody knows or that people have experienced, and a lot of times it helps if somebody can give you their opinion or share experiences or insights. and so then you get kind of an understanding of what's going on. So this discussion is it's my opinion, and there will be facts in there, but a lot of it's just my opinion and telling you my experience about this. Gonna have a sip of my peppermint tea. That's good. So, number one, it's a major online auction business, and I talked about that when I read the Wikipedia post. I have my notes off to the side here that I'm reading. It's kind of a pet peeve of mine when I see people, not that I'm an expert, but when I see people make videos and they just wing everything out of their head. And even if they're professionals, been doing it for 40 years or something, I don't know, I guess, college is still in my brain. You need to get an outline and come up with a list and things. So stay on track and really talk about things that you want people to know. So number two, eBay went through many changes as a learning curve. And one of those things I remember in the beginning was they eventually removed people's IDs when they sell. So like if I participated in an auction as a buyer, and then whether I won or didn't win after the auction is over, and I think you can still look at this information today except for the ID part. But you used to be able to go back to look at the thing that you were watching, like you wanted to buy this item, so you're watching it, and then next time you logged in, the sale is finished, and then you can go look at the sale, and it'll tell you how much it sold for, and it used to tell you who the person was, the ID of the person who bought it, and then it would show a history of all the bids, and then it would have all their IDs, and what it makes me laugh because I feel it was the members had to pay the price for that learning curve when I think eBay really should have had some kind of initiative or intelligence to figure this out instead of letting the bad things happen as a way of learning. But anyway, what happened is people that are criminals or have bad intent would go on there, and then they would go to those same auctions, like I said, when it was finished, and then they would look at the IDs of the people who bid and lost, and then they would send messages to those people and they would say, hey, I'm this person. I don't know if they used if they used their own software to make it look like they were that person. I don't know the details, but they would contact the person who lost, or all the people who lost, and they would offer them the item again. They'd say, oh, the person who won backed out and they couldn't pay or whatever, so now I'm going to offer it to you at a discount. And some of these items, like I remember one that was in the news, was like I don't know if it was $50,000 or $20,000 wedding dress or something, and some lady got caught in that trap, and she paid because she thought it was the original seller contacting her, and she thought her luck had changed, and she could get it, and that was a scam. And that's how eBay figured out that, oh, maybe we shouldn't put people's IDs up like that after the sale because this could happen. And every business learns as they go. That's how you do anything in life, no matter what your business is. But sometimes you need to be a little bit more savvy about unscrupulous things that can potential things that can happen. So, but anyway, that's up to you to judge whether that's their fault or not. But that's what happened, and I'm guessing those people got reimbursed. I don't know, but maybe if they didn't if the person wasn't caught, traceable or something, then they probably wouldn't have. Excuse me. So that was one of the first things I saw. And then eBay, they originally started as like an auction company, and they were doing online auctions exclusively. But as they developed, and I think they started this pretty early on, then they switched to the Buy It Now feature, which is mostly what I use now because I just use it as a store, And I don't know, it's kind of a hobby. If you use the auction, you got to kind of have a lot of free time, and people don't really have that. You want to just buy something the price you want, if it's the item you want, that sort of thing. It became more of a store in that sense, like that. So, um, but I know, like, what I mentioned about that, those people who got burned with that ID scam. There was another. I don't know if eBay has corrected this. To my knowledge, as far as I can tell, I don't think anything's changed. But this happened a long time ago with me on eBay. Um, I purchased some items from another state, United States, and it was an auction. When I first started on eBay, I used to do auctions a lot. I mean, participate in, like I was a buyer, and I don't really participate in those now. I just purchase to buy it now. But um, what happened was I got scammed, and the seller, what they did is, you know, eBay has, and like I said, I don't do auctions anymore, so I don't know if things have changed, but they always had a system so that, you'd put in your bid, obviously, for the item, but then you could also, as seen only by you, you could put in your maximum bid. So in this case, I put in a bid for, I don't know what it was, $25 or something, and the current bid was like 30 or 40 or something. And I put in a maximum bid. I used that part of their software, eBay, and I put in a maximum bid of like $120, which was the most I was willing to pay, which is more than I wanted to pay, but I wanted these items. They were car parts, used car parts, for a vintage car. So I put in the maximum. And what happened was this seller, he he had a friend, or else he had a second account, but he had somebody else go on there, and he had this other account bid against me continually and progressively in a short time. He did it to uh, sorry, I got something was distracting me. Uh, he did it to find out what my maximum bid was. So this person, or that was the seller, they continually bid in higher increments until they reached my maximum bid, because the way they know that is that, like, say his last second to last bid was $118, and then it still said he lost, and it shows him that right away in the software. And so then he'd go to like 121 or 125, and then it would show that he's the winning bidder. So then he figured out, that's how he knew that my bid was 120. And so then what the seller did is then he canceled this other bidder's bids, and then he let him come back and bid again, and then he already knew what my maximum bid was, even though it was supposed to be secret. And so then when he bid the second time, he bid up to like 119, so that I still won at 120, and then he stopped bidding, and then the auction ended. And I don't remember if they did this towards the end of the auction or midway or something. It was many years ago. But so then I won, but they got my maximum bid, and they did it, illegally. They weren't supposed to use the software like that. And so, I mean, I figured it out right away when I won. I was happy I won, but I was surprised. And then I figured out what they did, and then I contacted eBay, and I told them, and they, looked at the auction, and they said, we don't see anything wrong. And so then they just let it go. And I delayed my payment, by a couple days. Usually I always pay right away. And I told the guy, excuse me, that I was talking to eBay. And so I think he kind of knew that I knew something was up, and then I could tell he did something. But I mean, like I said originally, I wanted the part, and so I went ahead with it. But it was an angering and frustrating experience that I got burned like that. I didn't appreciate that at all. Anyway, I'm getting off track here. But that was one of my experiences, and so I don't know if that's still going on or not, but that can happen. And when I first started, I had kind of a strict policy with auctions that was, I think, much better, but you kind of had to have more free time. I was a full-time college student, and I just used my spare time to do all the auctions, or in between studying and classes. I was always on computers anyway. But I always kind of had a strict policy that, the best way to bid was to wait until the end of the auction. And if you had a fast connection, which I was had the fastest at the time, it was a T1 connection because I was using the university's computers. Then you could actually come in at the end of the bid, and then just down to the last. I mean, I'm talking like, God, if I can remember, I don't know, it's like 7 seconds, 4 seconds or something, because it takes some time, for all this to travel through the internet. But you wait down to the last minute if you got a fast internet connection, then you put in your bid, and if if the other guy doesn't have a secret higher bid, then you're going to beat him, and then that was always a good way to work it. And I tried never to put in a bid and then just at the beginning of the auction, like if it's a 7-day auction, put in a bid at the beginning and then just wait, because I don't know, it never seems to work, and people always get excited when they think they can beat you and stuff. So I had better luck doing it at the end of the auction. And that time I got burned with that part I was telling you, that was part of that not good luck way of doing it, where I put in the bid early, and I was just too busy to babysit that auction at the time. So number 3, back to the list here. eBay has been a positive business website, a good company. However, they've always maintained a capitalist focus, and I say that in the extreme, their focus. And it's been at members' expense, in my opinion. And many what they call features and what they call tools in the software for eBay members whom purchase stores. If you were somebody who wanted to start a store selling stuff, they call that a store on eBay. You buy it, you rent it. So many of those eBay members who purchase stores or just auction space, like if you were just you didn't have a store but you wanted to sell stuff on there, those features and tools frequently came with deliberately hidden costs that members couldn't see easily. And I mean, it was bad, I mean, I don't think I experienced a big chunk of it like I think a lot of people did, but it was really, and maybe it's still there. I don't have a store. I don't sell anymore much on there if I do. But it's pretty bad, the way they would do that stuff. And let's see. Or the other thing, the hidden cost was they also would silently bill you after the fact. So usually you get a hidden cost charge, because you thought it was included. Like they'd say, here's your store, here's all the tools, go ahead. And it was kind of like, a good way to compare it is a casino. If anybody's ever been to a casino and they got that water, I got burned on that too, that water that they put out there. Oh, I'm thirsty. Great, I'll pay $8 for a thing of water, But anyway, that was their other way too. I mean, those hidden costs, they'd say, here's your tools, here's your store, and then you'd start using features, and then it would either block you and tell you, oh, this costs money to use this feature, or it wouldn't block you, and then you'd get a charge later for it that you used it. And I think they changed that because, it was pretty unscrupulous. They started making it very obvious that, okay, here's what you're going to pay if you use this feature. But they never used to do that. And I think a lot of people got burned on that. And so then they would send you those charges. And it was a very frustrating experience. And eBay's tactics were, I would call that illegal, but that's my opinion. And often members were tricked into paying more for tools and services, just like I talked about. And eBay made those services appear to be clear and simple. In other words, eBay charged you for things that led you to believe they were included in your purchase price. That's kind of what I already talked about. But it has always been very common eBay practice to charge members for selling and then charge for searches of your item. and then charge for listing, then charge for the duration, then charge for features, then charge for final sales fee, and then a collection fee, and then payment fee, and of course the ever famous entrapment into renewed auction fee. I don't know if anybody's got burned on that one, where you list something and it it's like it's almost as bad as Facebook with their non-privacy of your rights. Uh, you list something on eBay in an auction, and then there was like this auto renewal, and so if you weren't paying attention, that was another one of those hidden things. What could happen is your auction get done, you're not even there. It happened. You're somewhere else, and then your auction starts again, and uh, then you get charged. And you had to know, oh, I had to click that. I didn't want that to be auto renewed, and so then you're screwed. And it gets to be that entrapment thing, because once you're invested in something and then somebody throws hidden charges at you, in most situations in life and in business, you end up paying because you got entrapped. You didn't expect that, but so you had this idea that you were going to do something more permanently, so it's kind of hard to pull out at that point. And a lot of businesses, I think, know that, and that's why they do that. They take advantage of you like that, which is really, it's unscrupulous. And there were lawsuits in eBay's past, um, by eBay store owners, and I believe by eBay members, which store owners are members too. And keep in mind that eBay makes their money off of membership in an online software program, uh, which is extremely profitable. And so, just to mention, if you think that eBay, you know, is just getting by, with their expenses and their profit margin, um, don't be fooled in thinking that, because um, they can provide better support services, and they can afford to spend the money to make it easier and to make things more clear for people than they did in the beginning. And just as an example of some of their profits, way back in 2006, I believe it was, could have been 2007, but I think it was at the end of 2006 or somewhere right in there. I recall that John Schneider, which many of you will know is Bo Duke from the original 1970s television series, The Dukes of Hazzard. He's the blonde-haired guy that used to drive the General Lee. Um, he sold one of his General Lee cars on eBay back at that time that I mentioned, and he sold that for $10 million. I remember because I watched the auction, and I don't remember if it was 5 or 7 day auction, but it ended up closing the final sale at $10 million. Now, for that sale, that's a minimum of $2 million profit for eBay for that sale, because eBay's normal fee has always been 20% whenever you sell something. And that's not all that they got. I mean, they got that 2 million, and then they got their fees, just like I talked about before. There's always fees associated with an auction, and they got their features and fees, and they got their after sales charges, and possibly more. So it wasn't just that, and that's just from a software program. So that's basically like if you have a computer at home and you have Windows on it. If I came to you and said, I need to use your computer for a week, I'll give you $2 million minimum. Would you do it? Because they already had the software, and they didn't. There's nothing they have to invest. If somebody sells a pencil for a nickel on eBay for a week's auction, it's the same cost for eBay as what John Schneider's sale was. Only you can see there's a bigger difference in their profit. So they weren't an unprofitable company. So it's not like they couldn't afford, to do some of those things that I talked about, On to the next point, number 4. eBay started out more legit than they are today, in my opinion, and you need to keep that in mind as the years go by, because I think that happens to a lot of businesses, or a lot of different things. and as they get more experience or more business, then they tend to be more cutthroat and more ruthless than they were when they started. So in the 15 years that I've been a member of eBay, I've seen things go downhill. Not everything. Still a positive company, but um, I've seen the changes happen in it. So number 5, today eBay is what I would call in a free fall into a bad area. And basically their current platform has the least amount of buyer protection eBay has ever had. And what eBay did have in the past for included protection, now eBay tries to sell that to you after your purchase, and they call that insurance. So it's kind of what I just mentioned, how they changed over time. But in the past they were a lot more buyer protective, way more buyer protective than they are today. They kind of put their hands up and sit on their hands a lot now and just let things happen. But in the past, they got involved more, and I remember even sellers, being frequently upset or frustrated because it was really a buyer's platform. They really protected the buyer, and so a person, for example, could purchase, like just say hypothetically, you could purchase the color blue, and when you got it, you'd say, no, that's not blue. I'll show you blue, and then I want to return it. It's not blue. I mean, you can't really argue with stuff like that. It's just people's differences in their tastes, and their perceptions and things, or perspectives. Um, so, I mean, eBay used to honor that a lot more. They would just say, hey, you know, send it back, give them the money, and they would protect the buyer. But now it's kind of turned around. It's not so much like that. So that's something I've seen. And like I talked about with how they sell that insurance now, you never used to see in the sales after you bought something, whether it was auction or buy it now, you never used to see any options. Excuse me. It would just say, here's your purchase price, And now you see all the time where it says, well, if you want to buy buyer protection for this, spend an extra this much money, and this will give you 1 year of protection or 90 days or whatever, 2 years. And they call it a plan, a service plan or something, and it covers accidents or damage or faulty stuff or whatever. And that was more common to be part of the program with eBay in the past, but now it's separate, and then of course they get money for that now. Even though it costs money now, I haven't used it yet, but I probably should have a few times, and I would recommend using that on some things for sure, absolutely, because there's just some things, and that's just kind of a no questions asked type of policy, that insurance. So eBay will protect you. And in the past, I was what do you call it? I exercised their protection at least once or twice. I had one time where I bought a textbook when I was in college, and the seller, I don't know, for whatever reason, I'm just guessing, but I think he turned around and sold it to somebody else, but he kept my money. I don't know why, or if he just thought he'd get away with it or what. So I never got the book, and it was like $30 or something. And eBay reimbursed me and paid for that. So, there was protection like that. So, on to number 6. In the past, eBay tried hard to have no human contact with members, but in my opinion, eventually they realized that they would lose all business if they kept that up. However, getting answers and finding answers and solving site and purchases and sale issues has always taken, in my opinion, mammoth patience from you as a member. It was really frustrating in the past trying to find answers to things on their site, and then it was more difficult to get a hold of somebody, and that's gotten that part got better. So number 7, eBay software has always been extremely difficult and complicated to figure out. Things like setting your default email or charged payment type, and some of that stuff it sounds pretty simple, but you get surprised a lot of times on things and you didn't know what happened. Like something would get sent to a different email, and there's some complications in the way they do that stuff, and some of it had to do with like uh, auctions versus buy it now selling and different things. And I got I got screwed up a few times on that, and it was a kind of a nightmare trying to get that stuff straightened out because you were expecting some money and it went to a different email, and there's no easy way to solve that shit once it happens because it's like they make you contact the seller and make them take back their money, and you have to retract and do everything in reverse, and it's not easy, and it's complicated and takes time and stuff. So that stuff was not easy. Um, and eBay always kind of had the attitude like, well, we don't have any authority. We don't know. I mean, that's really stupid. um, let's see. And the charged payment thing, that was the same type of thing. I got stuck with that a few times where, you know, whatever you had set for your default payment, if you change something else in your auctions or something, then that stuff could change. Or if you updated your information, all of it, even your email, but you didn't specifically update that one thing in your auction, that's what it was. It was like I would update all my information, put in a new email, and then I would start an auction and sell something. Then when it got done, nothing came to my email, but it said they paid, and then I'd have to contact eBay and figure out, and then they'd say, oh, well, what you got to do is when you do the auction, you got to put in a specific email that you want in there, blah, blah, blah. It was like, God, that was frustrating. And I've had to have them, either eBay or PayPal, reset defaults, settings sometimes, because I've had it where something can't get done, and they tell me, well, you're just going to have to restore your defaults or something, and that's frustrating too. Let's see here. And just like I talked about those issues, there was also dealing with after sales issues or after purchase issues. A lot of times that stuff was really difficult. And maybe some of this stuff is proprietary to internet sales versus brick and mortar store sales. So it may be unfair to blame eBay for some of those frustrations, because maybe that's just in general, what you'd experience switching from buying stuff in the store to buying online. Which, by the way, incidentally, I always tell people that I meet, if you're gonna, eBay is great, or any buying online stuff is great if you're not concerned about returning it, because you'll get a better deal, and gets delivered to your door, and you get more selection and different things. It's great for that. But like, say there's something you want to buy that you think it might be an expensive purchase, or it might be something that for whatever reason you think it might have a problem, and you might have to return it or something. If you're worried about that, then I always tell people, go to a store, a physical store, because if you go down the road to Walmart and you buy something, you have an issue, it's going to be a lot easier to go back there and deal with it than if you would have bought that same thing off of eBay or online, and now you're trying to send it back and get refund and ship it and wait for your refund, and everything's electronic, and the communication is a nightmare. And that's really one of the biggest problems with a lot of online stuff, is that versus brick and mortar stores, is that the communication can be really frustrating. Some people are just busy. I mean, if you've ever dealt with a state or a government, you know what I'm talking about. They don't get back to you. Number 8, eBay used to try to monopolize more on their accepted payment method. And so you had to use only one option or a few options, even though it was very common for people to use a lot of different payments. I'm talking about like credit cards and stuff. And today eBay is better about using other credit cards, although PayPal is still sponsored as eBay's official payment method. And in the past, I always have digestive issues, so you gotta excuse my my kind of my digestion, I guess. Um, let's see, where was I? Oh, yeah, eBay. You know, in the past, PayPal was eBay's sister company. So, and I believe PayPal was founded and started by Elon Musk, but I don't know what that has to do with eBay because eBay was a French guy. That was French American that started eBay. Um, but PayPal used to be a sister company with eBay, and that they were the official payment method. But today they separated as businesses, and they actually kind of fight each other and on financial issues. And you'll actually come across where they kind of play the blame game, not real seriously. I've seen it much worse with other businesses, but you know, sometimes you'll deal with eBay and they'll say that's PayPal. You're gonna have to talk to them, and then you'll deal with PayPal and they say that's eBay. You're gonna have to talk to them, and then you got to grab both their heads and bang them together and say, hey, somebody's got to work something out here because I'm neither of you two. You know, I'm stuck in the middle. Well, you say it's not. I mean, I'm probably exaggerating a little. It's not that bad, but they do have a little bit of that little differences now since they split. But they still have a strong business ties. And like I said, the PayPal is still the sponsored payment method. But I think in the past, like when they were more exclusive or proprietary about their payments, I think you might have been charged if you used a different credit card other than PayPal, and they would accept it, but then they would charge you a fee. And I don't know if they still do that. I think they just kind of absorb everything because they just they. Yeah, I hope they have, because then they would mean they realize that they're going to get more business if they just make it easier for people. Number 9, today eBay now applies tax to your purchases, and in the past they did not. And that is true. For the 15 years that I've been on there was no taxes for a long time, and that's one of the big benefits I've always liked about eBay is that you know your price up front. I mean, I'm not much of an Amazon shopper. I use their site for research on things I buy on eBay because eBay is really poor about research on the items, and Amazon is exactly the opposite. So you can go on there. I mean, eBay has consumer feedback now, but they didn't for many years when Amazon did. You can go on Amazon and find out about the product before you purchase it on eBay. But they, as I was saying, that's one of the benefits I like about eBay is you always know your price. Because even when I go to Amazon today, I can't stand it when I look at something and it says this is $20. Great, that's what I want to spend on it, and then you go to buy it and in the cart, and then it's $27 to ship it or something. It's like I can't. And every item is different shipping, so you never know what it's going to cost. So I really like that feature that you know what it's going to be total in on eBay, and that was before they had the taxes. And I know, just to digress, I know I've seen something in the news recently in an article where they were saying stop believing in free shipping. It's not free. Well, who gives a shit? I mean, if somebody sells something and they include the shipping costs into the price, I don't really care. Who cares? As long as it's the price you want to pay. I mean, if the item would cost $15 and they're selling it for $22 and saying free shipping, I don't care. At least I know what it's going to cost when I'm looking at the item. That's a big benefit. I don't have time to waste on checking everybody's shipping on crap. Anyway, like I said, getting off track. So they have taxes now, and you'll see that when you buy something on eBay now, you won't see the final price. I mean, the taxes aren't as bad as shipping, but it'll be a difference. If you were purchasing something for $30 and you're expecting that to be the price, then when you go to checkout and you pay, you might see 32 and change, or you might see 33 and change, and that's the tax, and it'll show you how much the tax is, but it never used to do that. So I don't like that. I'm not sure where that comes from. I'm sure it's a regulation or something, but not all those regulations are legal. I mean, you buy a car, for a brand new car, and you pay a tax on that car. Somebody drives it for 20 years and then they resell it. It's already been taxed, and now when they resell it, the state taxes them again, the new buyer of it. So it's being double taxed. That's not. It was already a taxed item when it was sold new. Anyway, um, so those are basically there's a lot more things about eBay, and like I said, I'm sure there's people who have a lot more experiences with stores and things. I have a lot more things to say, but I just wanted to mention some things, brief things, and talk about some of the stuff that I've seen. And uh, as I get towards the end of this discussion, I just want to share, some information about the biggest problems that will be facing you as an eBay member today, if you're going to be on there today. And one of them is, like I said earlier, in my opinion, it's kind of gone into a downward spiral, eBay, as far as their business ethics. And I've had it where the customer services representatives will just tell me flat out, we're just an online shopping mall. We don't have any responsibility in these sellers, and so we can't enforce or regulate them. And that's really frustrating, because I liken it to, if you go to a shopping mall, I mean, if there was a store there that's ripping people off, and there's a pattern or something, I mean, it's not going to be too long, before, there's going to be an issue, a legal issue with that company. And if somebody supports that, like a mall owner, if they know that that company is like cheating or, evading taxes or doing something, and they continue to lease to them, it's sort of like, leasing to or supporting an illegal business, and you become kind of a party to that. And that's even more so true than my example. It's more so true with eBay, because they have such a diverse range of products and things and types of sales that they do, that really they do share in that responsibility, in my opinion. And I really didn't like that when they told me that that's their position, because I don't think they were like that so much in the past. But so that kind of what that kind of says too to you is it goes back, harkens back to really old stuff in American history, which is buyer beware, that kind of shit. It's like it used to, probably people who are younger have never heard that, but in the earlier days in America, you would see that a lot in business. It'd be like buyer beware. It was up to you to decide whether or not you were getting ripped off. And so if you got ripped off, a lot of times that saying kind of meant, well, you were that stupid, then you deserve to get ripped off. And that's kind of changed, and it's more like, the ethics have gotten better in business to the, extent that, there's laws that regulate things, so if businesses are too unscrupulous, then they can be held accountable for that. But that's what I say now. Definitely that saying applies with eBay today, because it's really, it goes back to the early days of America. I mean, you will be eating your own feces, and they will tell you that's your problem. That's what it'll end up being, Um, and I believe much less responsibility is taken by eBay regarding bad businesses and bad sellers than it. Like I mentioned earlier, it used to kind of be the other way around when buyers were protected. Now, I think as they're kind of in that downward spiral, I think they're trying to get what they can out of it. So if they have, for example, a bad seller who maybe was good feedback for a long time, maybe even years, but then he starts getting a lot of negative feedback and starts screwing people over, it's not like eBay is really going to step in. They're just going to kind of continue to cash in on that seller until he finally crashes. He might be going down in a spiral too, and they're just going to get their money out of him too, and your fees and everything before he goes down. Which I don't think it should be like that. I think it should be caught and stopped before then. And if you research in businesses, you'll find that that's kind of that can happen. Like look at Sears for an example. I read a lot of stuff online when Sears was closing. I don't know if they're completely closed all across the United States. I know they closed here and where I'm at, and they closed. I remember hundreds of stores all at the same time that happened. But you would read online that a lot of people were complaining like crazy about Sears, and that was like the last year that they were open. You'd read all these complaints, and it was really ridiculous and preposterous stuff, and people weren't even manning the stores. I mean, they were just gone, the employees and stuff. And people walk around there forever just trying to find somebody, and there's nobody even there because they don't care about having a cigarette. Fuck it. um, but yeah, so eBay is kind of given me that appearance that of those stores, like when they do that, when they're going down, and then they don't really care. I've seen that with restaurants too that are going to close. You'll go in, their dishes are dirty, you complain, they almost give you the finger, they don't care. Who cares? So it's up to you to kind of know if something's crashing, whether or not you should be affiliated with it when that's happening. uh, and the feedback system on eBay is way skewed, really skewed. And today it works really strongly against a buyer's protection. So it's kind of a complicated issue with their feedback system, but one example is like resolution actions that don't pause feedback time frame. And what I mean by that is, okay, so recently I got ripped off on eBay. I got taken for $23 and I never got that back, and I never got a product out of it, and the time frame is up. I think actually when, I could be wrong, but I think when eBay first started, I think their feedback window, I want to say it was like 30 days. I swear I remember it being like 30 days, but I know for years now, or as long as I can remember, it's been 60 days, what it is now, which amounts to, about 2 months. And so what that means is, like, if you buy something, if you go on eBay and you find a product you want and you buy it, then you have 60 days to leave feedback for the seller about that item. And that's your strongest possible protection and defense as a buyer. That's the one thing that you have to hold on to like a lifeline, like a one of those preservers they give you if you're drowning in the water. That's the one thing that'll protect you. That has saved me so many times with bad sellers who normally would just, that's the way they treat you, and that's what they want to do, but they can't, because that chain, it's like a dog's leash. It just locks them in. Nope, you're not going anywhere. You can do this right, and they have to. And by the way, I always tell people too, like versus Craigslist, because a lot of people I like Craigslist. I've used a lot for years, but I always tell people what the biggest difference with Craigslist and eBay, besides that they're, Craigslist isn't an auction or anything, it's just classifieds. But one of the biggest things, if you're selling stuff, or I mean, if you're buying stuff, is that people have to be responsible and accountable on eBay, but they don't on Craigslist, which is wrong. They should have to be, but they don't. So you're going to run into a lot more, difficult and unscrupulous situations, with Craigslist than you will anyway with eBay. But back to this, the feedback thing with eBay. And as I was saying, I got taken for $23. So, you get that 60 days and to leave your feedback. And it's quite normal for me. I can only speak for myself, but for the type of things that I buy and stuff, it's quite normal for me to fully use that window. I mean, I have a degree in mechanics and I fix my own cars and bicycles and motorcycles and stuff. So I buy all the parts and everything. And it's often the case, it's very common for me to buy a part much earlier than I need it, because that's when I have the time, that's when I have the money, that's when something's on sale, that's when it's popular, that's when it's in stock, for a number of reasons. when you buy it, and I don't plan on using it for 30 days or 60 days, or maybe even longer, until I install it or, put it on the vehicle or use it or something. And some of those things can't be tested, like for example, if I buy an alternator, it might look fine when it comes in the mail, but you're not going to know if it works till you put it on, or unless you have a test machine and you test it or something. And so, if you're a naive eBay member, if you just started, you get excited and you just leave positive feedback right away because you want to be a good guy, But I got burned on that, and I don't do that anymore. I'll risk the window closing and not being able to leave feedback before I'll leave feedback in a naive way if it's just assuming everything's fine because the product came, which you don't really want to do that. Unless it's really, cheap purchases, $5 or something, who cares, I guess. But so that's common for me to wait, to test the item. And I bought something recently that I got, like I said, way ahead of time. I was busy. I was working overtime at my job. I didn't have time to install this piece. It was, something, it's going to take a lot of time. I was not planning on doing it for a while, but I bought it when I had some time. And so then eventually when I looked at the piece, I looked at it when it came, I opened it up, stuff, it looked fine. But then when I went to go install it, and it's a screen from my phone, my smartphone. And I made the mistake of already taking my phone all apart and everything, and I had to actually break something that was glued in there to get apart, so I had to replace that. So I disabled my phone when it was already working, but I had a problem because I was going to put the screen in. And then when I looked at the screen to actually put it in and actually, pulled a few of the wires over to make them fit, the thing was extremely damaged, and there was no way, I wasn't even going to try. Even if this thing would have worked, the longevity would be so compromised. It had so much physical damage to it. And it was a really, really dumb oversight. It was something really simple. You won't see it unless you flip up the little green wire, but once you flip that, it's right in your face, And so, as I was saying, with the feedback system, so I waited, and I really wasn't concerned about even leaving feedback for this item because I thought, I'm sure it's fine. I got a good deal on it. It's used, and I'm sure it'll be fine. And so I almost let the window expire, the 60 days, but then probably like 2 weeks or so before it expired, that's when I got around to doing this. And then when I found out this thing was severely damaged, I was really pissed. And I sent this back to the guy, contacted the seller and everything, and initiated a return and all that, and contacted eBay and went through all their formal process. And then I shipped it back because I looked and my feedback window was getting close. So I shipped it back as fast as I could. And it came down to just days, of the feedback thing expiring in just like a day or two. I shipped it and I waited, and a couple days went by, and then all of a sudden I noticed my feedback expired, and then I waited 2 more weeks or something, and nothing ever happened. And then I contacted this guy, and right away he's lying and telling me to prove the delivery confirmation number and stuff. And that's the smartest thing you should always do, is do that. And I got in the habit of always doing that. But in my city, one of our post offices has an automated mailing machine, and if you go in there at night when the post office is closed, you can send something and get your postage paid and weigh it and everything on this machine. It's got a camera and everything. And I use that, and of course I don't use it very much, so I always forget, and I got burned on that once before, but I always forget that machine does not give you a tracking number, because it is a package, and the Postal Service, USPS, always provides tracking numbers for packages. For envelopes you got to pay extra, but on packages they provide it. But that machine does not give it. I don't know why, and so they can't trace it. And then this guy did that, and then he said he was saying he didn't get it and stuff, and but right away he's trying to make me prove the number and stuff. And So, and it was right when the window expired for this feedback. So I got screwed because now he's crossing his arms, giving me the finger and saying, tough luck, because he knows I can't leave feedback, now. So he knows I'm screwed. And when you contact eBay, it's almost a repetitious uh, line that they'll give you all the time, oh, well, you're outside of the feedback window. There's nothing we can do, blah, 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 blah. And they do that shit all the time. And so, I mean, in their defense, I should say they do still try to help you. I don't mean it that to be that harsh. They do still try to help you. They do help you go through the process and try to return it to the person. They just tell you they can't, be involved in it as officially as they would if it was still in that time frame. And so my point about that is that it's a skewed feedback system because, okay, that there's that 60 days, and I know that. And so if we're members, you and me on eBay, and we're buying, that's our responsibility to know that and to follow that regulation or that rule. But when somebody initiates a return, in my opinion, the feedback system should be put on hold. And so, excuse me, it should pause, just like hitting a pause button, because there's no determination on that time. Not even eBay or anybody can say, oh, well, this is the time frame it takes for a return. That stuff can drag on. It can go quickly or it can drag on. There's no way of knowing. And there's so many issues that come up, and the payment might get, not gone through and all this stuff. And so really that thing should be paused, even more so because of the fact that you're in a resolution action, official. You've registered an official return resolution action with eBay. That's even more reason why they should pause that feedback, because all that time that it takes eats up your feedback time. So I got burned on that, and that guy was a real asshole about it, the seller. So, which, by the way, as long as I'm waving his stink around, you might as well say, his company is American Cellular Technology Incorporated. That's the name of his business at his location in Duluth, Georgia. But on eBay, he goes by Amceltech, AMCELLTECK, and that's his abbreviation for his name. And he sells phone stuff and all that. And their address in Georgia is 2875 North Berkeley Lake Road, Northwest, Suite 18, Duluth, Georgia, 30096. So you may not want to buy from that guy. And when I registered a complaint with the Better Business Bureau of Duluth, Georgia, I noticed there were a few other complaints, and other people had experienced a bad attitude by that seller also. So let's see. And the other thing that's really screwed about the feedback, I don't know if you call, yeah, I guess it would. The feedback thing on eBay is that in my opinion, the feedback system, and I'm referring to specifically like when you look at sellers ID and it'll say this guy's got 2,000 positive feedbacks, or this guy's got 15, or this guy's got 30,000. In my opinion, that system was designed for much smaller numbers. I don't know if eBay ever anticipated that they're going to have sellers that have 250,000 positive feedbacks or something. But it's very common, these high volume sellers on there. They're just basically businesses that piggybacked onto eBay when it got popular, and so they run big business on there and they sell in huge volume. And I don't know if eBay ever anticipated that when they created their feedback system, but in my opinion, it does not function correctly, the percentages. And, you'll see that in business a lot, like, businesses don't just apply a percent in a blanket policy. Like they won't say, oh, well, you're going to get 25% off any amount. Most businesses will be like, you'll get this much off up to this amount, and then it drops because they get screwed if they let you have that much off of bigger purchases. And so I don't think eBay did anything like that. And so their system, it's deceptive, in my opinion. And I'll explain what I'm talking about with that. Once a seller reaches a certain high volume of feedback ratings, like let's say somebody has 50,000 feedbacks, numbers on their ID, those are the transactions and stuff. There really should be, in my opinion, a change in the way that percentage is calculated once you get over a certain volume. And I don't know offhand what that would be, but maybe it's 10,000, maybe it's less, maybe it's more, I don't know. But if somebody figured out a number and said, okay, this is the feedback system for eBay, and it works that way up until this number of sales, then it comes on a little bit stronger, because what's happening, or at least what I'm experiencing, you can decide or know if you have had this too or seen this, but if you have somebody who's got a high volume sales, high volume feedback, they can have, like, for example, 99.8% positive feedback. And so, like, if you're somebody who's got 50 sales, if you're a member on eBay and you're selling and you've got 50 positive feedbacks, if you've got a 99.8% positive, I mean, that's really good. You're still, on all likeliness, a very good seller. But if you're somebody who's got 50,000 or more positive feedbacks, and you've got a 98 or 99.8% feedback rating, you can be a really bad seller. I mean, obviously you got a long history of doing good at some point, but that small percentage can be a lot of bad sales, a lot of bad feedback, and it's deceptive because you'll look at it like the same way you look at somebody with 50 sales at 99.8 and go, oh, it's a good seller. You look at somebody with 50,000 and, oh, then yeah, he's a good seller. He's more good than bad. But it's deceptive to a buyer, and the reality is that the seller could be a bad seller with many negative feedback ratings. And like I said, it deceives a buyer. And so, and I think I talk about this. I was going to just give some warnings about that, but I kind of talked about that at the end in the closing of this discussion. So I'll just hold off on that till I get to that. But another point to think about regarding eBay is and I think this is a double standard, is that eBay makes it a choice, quote unquote choice for sellers to leave the buyer positive feedback after you purchase and pay. So what I mean is, like, if I buy something from somebody on eBay, and my responsibility after I buy it is to pay for that item, and how I pay for that, and I'm not talking about method, but I'm talking about like the time frame. How I pay for that determines whether or not I was a good buyer or not. Because I know in the past, I don't know what it's like now, but I know in the past there was a lot of buyers, experienced sellers who would never pay or would pay so late, and things like that, and didn't communicate and stuff. So then those would be bad buyers. And, they would hope to get buyers that would pay right away. And for whatever reason, I always know I have the money when I'm going to make a purchase on there. So I've worked that out before I buy anything there. So as soon as I buy something, I always pay. And if there was maybe a couple instances where I had to pay a day or 3 days late, and I always send them a message right away, letting them know that there's a circumstance or something. But so that's what determines whether or not you're a good buyer or bad buyer, if you pay on time. That's what they look for. So when I buy something or you buy something and you pay right away, your responsibility as a buyer is done. The transaction is over on your part. I mean, you did your part and you purchased an item, which is not required, but that was your choice. You bought from somebody, but then what is required is that you follow up. You know, it's a legal transaction. You agreed to make this purchase, so do it. And so you're done. So then, in my opinion, there shouldn't be a choice for a buyer to say, well, we will or won't leave positive feedback on your account based on if we feel like it or not. That doesn't make sense because of the fact that, for example, on the other hand, this is the double standard I was talking about. On the other hand, when somebody sells you that item and like say they offer free shipping on it, which everybody's going to, and most items are a lot on eBay are a lot free shipping. They'll figure in the shipping time to that, and eBay more times than not will remove the option for you as a buyer to leave feedback on that seller's shipping time. And when you get done in the transaction, you got the item and you go to leave feedback for that seller. For people who are familiar with eBay, you know, you'll get those little categories, you know, how was the description, how was the shipping time, how was the communication by the seller, you know, and how was your experience, you know, stuff like that. And it used to always give you the option for the shipping time because that kind of held the sellers accountable, you know, for getting the item in the mail as soon as possible. But ever since they kind of went into this free shipping thing, they started taking away that option more and more. And so you'll see that it's very common where it'll be blocked out and it won't give you the option of leaving feedback for the shipping. And it'll say right in there, you can't leave feedback for the shipping because this was free shipping and the time was all preset and whatever. And that'll happen. I think it happens even if the item doesn't come on the time that was set to come. I'm not positive on that, but I think so. But my point is that if you as a buyer don't have the option of leaving shipping in that situation or leaving feedback in that shipping situation, then on the other hand, why does the seller have the option of not leaving you positive feedback as a buyer when you did everything right? It's like you fulfilled your obligation. I mean, eBay should probably have some kind of standard that says, well, you need to pay within 24 or 48 hours to satisfy our criteria. And then maybe if they had that policy, then their software could just say, you bought this, you paid, our computer shows it was paid, boom, then it would remove the option. And in this case, it would just make them leave positive feedback, or the computer would just do it and say this was a responsible seller, you know, leave it on your ID score or something. So not a huge deal, but you know, kind of, I don't know, something. So another thing that I'm spilling on myself here with my drink, you know, men need bibs. I'll agree to that. Amen. Another thing that I see as a bad oversight by eBay is in the searching criteria. Now, excuse me. When I search items on eBay, I can search by location, price, popular items, best match, and dates. Yet I can't search by feedback, which often would be extremely helpful if you are concerned at all over bad sellers. So what I mean by that is, and this is getting more and more relevant on eBay as time goes on, I really would like to be able to search by feedback rating, because I don't know about other buyers, like the kind of things everybody else is buying, but for example, myself, if I buy a lot of automotive stuff, it's a ocean, it's a flood out there of sellers. You know, there's no shortage of sellers, you know, when it comes to automotive industry. It's a huge industry, so there's aftermarket parts are just all over, used and new, you know, on online sales. And so that being said, Because if it was the other way around, if it was really hard to find sellers, you couldn't be picky. You'd have to just take what you can get. But since there is a lot, and since there is potential also for bad sellers, and that it just only takes one bad experience, people. Let me tell you, if you have one already, it's a nightmare. But since there is that flood of all those product out there, I would really consider it helpful if I could put in addition to those other search criterias like about location, price, and things, if I could put in sellers rating, so like only show me sellers with 100% positive rating. And if it turns out that it's only a few, well, okay, then maybe I have to look further and I need to see the other sellers. But I would like that choice first, because I find myself more and more searching and sifting and spending time trying to get through. I might look for a part, like if I'm looking for a brake caliper or something, I might get, I don't know how many hits, hundreds of hits. And I got to sit there, they're all very similar, and I got to sit there and go through them all, because I got to get the one that's got the best feedback. Because I mean, you don't want that experience like I talked about with a bad seller and stuff. It's worse online than it is in real life when you have it at a brick and mortar store. So I would really, really like it if I could have that as my first criteria as I go through the list. And obviously, those sellers would get more business if eBay had that feature, because people would go to that right away, in my opinion. And I think that's fine, because that's part of the criteria, And not all sellers that have negative feedback are bad. I still do buy from sellers that have negative feedback, but I talk about this at the end too, so I'll try to be brief about this now, but it just depends on what you're buying. But yeah, I would really like that feature, and it's more important now than it ever was, because as I was saying, eBay's kind of gotten in that downward spiral, so now you have to be more critical than you used to with the buyers. And I understand that, there's a lot of frustrated sellers too, because you get all these ridiculous buyers who have unrealistic expectations, or they are idiots, or they're just, they don't know what they're doing, or they're spoiled, or whatever. There's different reasons. So, there are sellers that get unfairly marked, and I did do that one time. I overreacted, and I left somebody bad feedback before the fact because I was mad, and then we worked it out, and he was good about it in the end. But then I contacted eBay, and I requested my feedback be removed, and they have a system for that, and they offered that, but the guy never took the offer. So I did my part. But so buyers can unfairly give a seller negative feedbacks. So that's why I say I still do buy from some buyers or some sellers that have negative feedback, because it depends. I'll get into this in the end too. I talk about that. But as I said, it's really a buyer beware market now on eBay. I mean, it's up to you really to decide how much you're willing to take a chance on, and leave that. I talked about my experience with that phone part. That was terrible. It'll jade you. It's bad. Another thing is that I never had this issue really be a problem in the past, but I don't know why it's come up more now. But eBay won't honor warranties or hold sellers accountable, or change policies regarding feedback for long-term warranties. This was an issue I had come up where I bought something that had a year warranty with it. It was, again, an automotive part, and it was just like I talked about earlier. This was a clutch. You're pulling a transmission out of a car to install this. Isn't something I'm doing the week I get the part, I'm planning this for later, And so my time frame had expired. I believe it had expired. It was probably like 3 months, maybe it was 2 months until I put this part in or something after I bought it. And I wasn't satisfied at all with this. I mean, I installed it and I drove this clutch, and it didn't feel right. It had problems and stuff, and the bearings were squealing right away, you know, and so I wasn't happy at all. And so, you know, I'm not gonna live with it. I mean, I do mechanics, so I just pulled it all out, and I didn't even want to get another one from this guy because, you know, what's the point if he sells you one shitty thing? He's just going to sell you a shitty thing number two, you know, second time around. So I bought it from somebody else, another part, and I contacted this person. I said, I don't even want another part. I just want my money back, because this part had a 1-year warranty against defects, and so, you know, I tried to evoke that warranty, even though my time frame for the feedback was done on eBay. And then I ran into problems because the seller was belligerent, and he just gave a really ignorant blanket statement. I researched the seller and I found out that other people have been burned the same way, and he gave the same exact statement to me. It was almost like a copy and paste, you know, rebuttal to everybody, and all the people had different problems why their parts broke. He gave the same thing. You know, it was installer's error, too much grease. You did this, you know, and he said it to everybody. He just didn't pay attention to what anybody's problem was. He just denied everybody, and so he was belligerent and a real jerk, and he wouldn't. I told him I didn't want another one. I just want my money back, and I was willing to send him the part back, even pay for it myself to send it back, and he wouldn't do any of that. And so eBay wouldn't have, like I told you before about their classic statement, well, you're outside of the window for this time frame for feedback. The transaction is over. We can't, you know, it's just telling you that shit again. But then I let eBay know that this product has a 1-year warranty, and when you look at it on its website, it still says that, you know. And it of course, all these bad sellers, they're always so flowery. That's the one thing you're going to see in these. I mean, even going back to what I said earlier about this guy with the cell phone, his ad was exact. We meticulously, painstakingly inspect, scrutinize these parts 200% before we, you know, it's just all this crap, you know, this bullshit. And this guy had the same stuff on his ad. That's why I bought it, because his ad was so flowery. Oh, customer service number one. Oh, warranty, no questions asked. You're not satisfied? Hey, I'm your guy. You know, and he wouldn't do nothing. And when I told eBay, well, this thing has a 1-year warranty, and obviously it shows I purchased it. I've got all the transaction and everything on there, so it's all a validated, verified purchase. And that's when I got that talk from eBay about, we're just an online shopping mall and we don't blah blah blah. And I was like, well, how can you not hold this guy accountable for his warranty? You know, I mean, I said, okay, I accepted all that, but I said, here's what I would like. At least let me leave bad feedback, you know, even though it's bad, it's past the transaction time, because this is a different situation, because there's this warranty. And they had no information, no policies. I was shocked. I said, you guys don't have any policies regarding warranties? Nope. It's the same thing. You get that time frame for your feedback and it's done. I thought, how can you have all these items all over your website that all have warranties, these different products, and you act like that doesn't exist or something, you know? So I was really frustrated with that. So yeah, so they won't have anything to do with warranty. So keep that in mind when you buy from a manufacturer. As soon as that time frame for feedback is over on eBay, you're on your own, you know, and that's what they're going to tell you. Now, I want to tell everybody, as I said, that the air has kind of changed with eBay over the years. So be extremely careful about buying from large volume sellers with negative feedback. uh, I'm just putting this out as a warning, and make sure you read the feedback, and also read the positive. I mean, you don't have to read everything if they got 200,000 feedbacks and stuff, but you know you can. eBay used to make it hard to read the negative, but they've gotten better, and you can just click on the negative and it'll take you right to that. You can read it, and you got to take things with a grain of salt. I mean, I can almost tell what people are idiots and which ones are more honest. I mean, it's hard to judge, but some people just, there's stuff they're complaining about. You don't hold the seller accountable for that, even though they left negative feedback. But the biggest thing, or as I was saying, just make sure you read that and read the positive, some of it, because what happens is there's a lot of buyers that don't feel comfortable leaving negative. They're nice people or something, so they'll leave positive, but they'll put in the description, yeah, the product was bad, but they still left a positive. So it can be important to read those ones too if you have the time, or it's available easily. And the biggest thing to look for when you're looking at that negative feedback is attitude. That is number one. That's my biggest concern when I look through there. If the negative feedback that you're sifting through and reading, if every single person, these are all different sellers from all over the world, or all over America, wherever, if every single person is talking about this seller's attitude being a big problem, that is the hugest red flag right there. That's the one thing you need to look for, because if they have a bad attitude, it doesn't really matter if they have more good sales than bad, because I've had encounters with some of those sellers with those attitudes, and that phone guy that's an example right there. If they got a bad attitude, nothing will make any difference at all. It's just like a cancer. There's no stopping it. They're on a path of destruction, in the transaction, and there's nothing that's going to fix it. Because their attitude is that way about it. They're ready. They'll go down with the ship. They don't care, and especially if they got a lot of positive feedbacks. And what I've kind of seen over the years too is, I think some of these sellers, they started out really good. It's almost like life. Someone came up in good background and then they went bad, and they started out really good and they got a lot of positive feedback, but then later they changed, or something changed, or their kids started running it or something, and then it's bad. So those are you get kind of burned, because those are really deceptive. I'll get off point here again, but I just mentioned another example. Last summer, I think it was, or the summer before, I bought some used parts from a seller, and it was a business, a brick and mortar business that had started selling on eBay, and these were automotive parts that were used. And there was a lot of red flags with this seller, going through this, but I got a really good price, and I was desperate for these parts, and I was really excited about it. And then the communication was really bad. It just took a lot of effort to get any communication out of the seller, and it took a long time, and it was giving me a lot of red flags, and then it just continued, because we had to be in contact a few times. And then during that time, I started reading the feedback, and I started reading their feedback on like Google too, because Google has its own business rating system on there aside from like eBay. And this the lot of the buyers were saying the same thing, really bad things about the responsibility. Not that the business was so terrible or something, but just that the people working there were really irresponsible and incompetent about a lot of things. I mean, some people, it was like they were buying expensive motors, and the motor was coming and it was physically broken, and stuff like that. And it was just insane experiences. So I actually canceled the sale before they even shipped the part, and I just told them I want my money back. And it was a hard thing to do, because I really need those parts, and that was a good deal. But I've been through a few bad experiences with eBay sellers, and I'm telling you, there's no price that can be put on not having those or avoiding them if you see them coming. So let's see. Yeah, pay attention to attitude. With the sellers. That's really the biggest key. I mean, if you see a seller that has negative feedback, but it's all different, and you can read the situations. That could be it still be a good seller. It's just that some of the stuff they might be peddling. A lot of stuff that comes from China, and I buy a lot of Chinese stuff, but it's hit and miss. It's 50-50. And if you make the choice as a seller to start selling that stuff, you may still be a good seller and a good person, but you're going to disappoint a lot of people and piss people off because they didn't know it was going to be that bad. So, but pay attention to that, because if it's that, or if it's this attitude, there's a big difference. I mean, mistakes can happen and parts can be cheap and stuff, but if a seller has a bad attitude and you're seeing that in everybody's feedback, I mean, you don't want to get involved with that seller, because even if they may send you a good part or something like that, you're taking your chances, because they'll come up, that attitude will flare up right away, even if you get, bad part. I had one person, a seller, years ago. I bought something out of California. It's car parts. These were brand new. And this was a automotive retailer. They sell a lot of new parts. And the thing came fast. It was a good price and it was good quality, but I ordered 2 hubs, front wheel hubs. And they sent me, one was the correct one and one was 5-bolt. My car is 4-bolt. It's a small car. They sent me one. It was completely the wrong part. Not even just like something that was a different part of the year, a change in the production or something, just a completely for something else, not even my car. And when I contacted this person, she was so upset, and right from the start. And she just was so angry because she said, I never make mistakes. And so right away, she just thought I was pulling a fast one on her, and she was convinced that's what this was. And I'm telling you, people, the only reason I got the correct part sent back to me, because I sent her, or she let me keep it, the bad one, but she sent me out the correct one. The only reason I got that is because I hadn't left feedback yet, and I was still within that time frame window. That was the only reason, because she had good feedback, and I tried to explain to her, because I've worked in warehouses and stuff, and I know probably what happened is that when people stock those bins, they're going around with a cart, and I got 3 of these, that goes in bin A64. I got 4 of these, that goes in B76, and and they put probably one of the wrong hubs in the wrong bins. And then when she fills the order, that's also what people do in warehouses. You're going, okay, I need 4 of those, I need 3 of these. You're grabbing from these bins, and you just grab it. You don't sit there and look at each part and verify, because the bin already says that's only those parts in there. So I'm sure that was probably what happened. But she was really upset. And how do you think I felt? That's offending to me too. I mean, I don't like to be bitched at and punished because somebody else's mistake. And you're going to find out with all these bad sellers, they're going to blame you. They're going to make a mistake and they're going to blame you. They're going to say, they're going to take their anger out on you, and they're going to be mad. And you're going to start to feel like an American citizen dealing with the Congress. What? Don't confuse us with the facts, you slave. Anyway, so yeah, so check that attitude, because that's what those sellers and their feedback, because that is the number one difference between a positive buying experience and a nightmare story of you being ripped off, and you'll be telling your friends and strangers about that rip off forever. How that went. I know I have a hard time forgetting this phone incident that recently happened. So I already said that sellers with some negative feedback can be still be good sellers, but also sellers with all positive or mostly positive feedback can still be bad sellers if those negatives are all, like I said, about their attitude and stuff. So pay attention to that, especially things like communication. I mean, the ones that have really bad attitudes, they're always really bad at communication, and they get upset. I mean, I'm like that as an individual. I mean, if I get frustrated dealing with something, I don't want to deal with it. You go away from it, and that's what they get right away too. You know, legit or not, but that's what happens. So, um, yeah, and if it says on the feedback, in addition to their attitude, if there's a lot of talk in the negative feedback from different buyers saying they refused a refund, or what's even worse is if it says that eBay had to step in and give the refund, that's that gets to be pretty belligerent. I mean, those sellers, I mean, they're done. They're not dealing with anything. They walked away from the situation, and they're not having nothing to do with it. And you don't want that, you know. I mean, when I sold more stuff, I try to keep things priced lower than what their value is, because everybody's always happy when you get a good value. If somebody's complaining, if they buy something and they're complaining they got ripped off, and say it costs $100, well, if they bought that thing for $60 or $70 or something, you know, they might not be as concerned, you know, about something they were when they paid a higher price for it. So I try to do that. You don't make as much profit, but um, you know, I try to do that. And then also, I always just, if it's something I'm giving a return on, just do it. You know, there's some things I just don't. You know, you can't, and you have to just be really clear about that in the sale ad. You know, this there's no returning this thing. But on things that you do say that, I mean, don't get pissy and moany about it. You know, just give people their money back. You know, I mean, that's why Walmart and stores like that are popular, because people know they're not going to be harassed. You know, and I had somebody who bought a really expensive item from me. You know, was a car part, and it was expensive, hundreds of dollars, and I needed the money, and I had that sale up, and you know, you got to relist and do all that shit when the sales don't go through, and that costs you money and stuff and time. But uh, this guy, you know, it was a younger guy, and he bought this fair and square, and he paid, and then I think he paid, and then he said, or his dad came on or something, said this is his father, and we that's not the wrong part. He didn't know or something, and or he said that's not the right part, and so he asked if he could have the money back, and I just said fine, you know, I don't care. I mean, I was completely in the right. The sale was legit, you know. They knew it. All the stuff was in there. It wasn't a wrong purchase because of anything I did. It was a wrong purchase because of their part. But you know, you just gotta understand that stuff when you're a seller. I had that happen in real life too. I had a guy buy a car, and he sent me the money. He bought it sight unseen from a distance away, and then a week later he showed up with his girlfriend or something, and she said he can't afford to buy this, and you know, he gets excited or whatever. He had a disability or something, and so she asked for the money back, and I gave him the money right back. I said fine. So yeah, so those things to be aware of, you know, with sellers, with negative and positive, and how that works. And then just to end the discussion, it's gone a lot longer than what I expected, but I digress a lot, you know, getting old. Um, just keep in mind, be aware of the seller's feedback, you know, be mindful of that. And remember, like I said earlier, in my opinion, that eBay is kind of in a free fall now. And that when companies get that way, from what I've seen, they don't really care anymore about fairness. Instead, they're running on the last tank of gas, running the machine into the ground before getting out and losing money. And that's what you see a lot of times. And once things get bad, if they continue or get worse with eBay, uh, in my opinion, it could be something, you know, they could end up selling off, you know, the company before it would become unprofitable. And if that happens, when businesses do something like that, they kind of run it into the ground till there's no more profit to make out of it. Then they sell it and get out with their money. And then the next guy, I don't know. I don't even want to speculate on how that goes with the next one, but those kind of situations. So that's my 10-minute eBay talk that turned into over an hour of time to talk. So I just wanted to share that with you and let you know to beware about that and those experiences with eBay. This is Dub Crank, American artist, coming at you from the ridiculously cold state of Minnesota. Thank you.